Just like any hobby, soap making and making your own products can be very, very cost effective, or because there's so many ingredients and so many molds and so many tools to try and play with, you can also make it really expensive. So I'm here to give you some money saving tips on how to make your hobby or your small business go even further by being even more affordable. So yes, of course, the elephant in the room, I am Anne-Marie. I do own Brambleberry.com, and of course I want you to buy all the soap supplies, of course, basically always from me. But I also remember what it's like to be out there selling soap, because I have sold soap at craft shows and at farmers markets all across multiple states for many, many years back in the day. And so I know how hard it is to make an actual dollar selling soap. And so I do want to give you the tips and tricks to either make your hobby more enjoyable so you can do it more for fun and creativity, or you can make more money at your business. So we all know that making your own soap and your own handmade products can really provide a much vast superior product to what's in the stores. And one of the reasons for that is if you purchase fully tested ingredients. There is nothing more tragic than making a big batch of soap or making a big batch of lotion only to have it separate or fail in the end. And one way to make sure that doesn't happen is by purchasing ingredients that have been fully tested by soap makers for soap makers. For example, it might seem really inexpensive to buy a cheaper fragrance oil from an untested vendor, but if your entire batch of soap fails, well, that little bottle of fragrance just turned really expensive. So many candle and soap fragrances out there have not really been tested, either for throw in your candles or for skin safety, for example, in your lotions and leave-on products, or for whether they're gonna work in your cold process soap. Either they're not gonna last or they might throw your soap into a tailspin. So get fully tested ingredients for all of your DIY bath and body products and soap making products. And if you are shopping at Brambleberry, you can find testing notes for all of Brambleberry's fragrances on each individual product page, including what color the soap goes to when you're making cold process soap. This leads me to my next tip, which is splurging smart. There are so many amazing ingredients out there that can dramatically affect the formulation of your product or really wow your customers. One example of splurging smart is, say, when you're using a luxury oil, for example, you might want to use it in a leave-on product rather than a rinse-off product. For example, jojoba oil is one ingredient that I love in my leave-on products like lotions. And in soap, well, it's a rinse-off product. So my customer's not gonna get quite the same effectiveness of that jojoba in that rinse-off product. So I'm gonna want to make sure that my expensive jojoba oil is in a leave-on product. Another thing with splurging smart is you're going to want to make sure it's in your marketing materials. Of course, always make that big call out that this product has whatever luxury item you are putting inside of the leave-on or rinse-off product. When the customer knows that it's in the product, that way your investment becomes their investment. My next tip is to test smart. So what does this mean? It means that when you're making your batches, you are taking rigorous notes. So when something went really well, you know how to replicate it. Or if something failed and didn't go well, you can look at your notes and pinpoint exactly what went wrong so you don't have that failure again. So another part of testing smart is to make small batches to start. That means that when you have a new fragrance oil or a new ingredient, you make a small test batch to ensure you can fully scale up. I mean, after all, there's nothing worse than making a huge batch of soap and having it fail or not liking the fragrance. So for example, you can always get a test ounce size of fragrance, like the Brambleberry sizes are 0.5 ounces, which makes 1 pound of soap, which is perfect for doing a small test batch. The same goes for extracts with your leave-on products and extracts for your rinse-off products like conditioners or shampoos. The next tip is to store your ingredients properly. And I know this seems like a no-brainer, but really in general, you always need to store all your supplies in a cool environment, off the ground on shelving where they can't get wet, and make sure you're writing when you purchase the product so you can do a first in, first out with your oils, so that way you never end up with rancid oils or spoiled products. So some oils can benefit from being put in the refrigerator or even the freezer, especially if you're in a hot or humid area. So consider temperature and ambient temperature and humidity when you're thinking about long-term storage of your products. My next tip is to not let any of your products go to waste. Repackaging some of your scraps can really go a long way for giving out samples. After all, who doesn't love a nice little stack of sample soaps? Repackage your soap ends into soap samplers. Pour any of your leftover wax into wax melt little tart things. You can use any of your leftover lotion and put them in little tiny containers for lotion samples. And of course, if you have leftover soap, you can make confetti soap. You can grate it up, you can cut it into chunks, and you can put it into fresh batches of soap, which means you're using less fresh ingredients and not letting any of your soap scraps go to waste. The next tip is to think bigger. So this next tip won't apply to every single maker, but for some makers, creating bigger batches can be much more cost effective. Supplies become more cost effective at larger sizes, and buying less variety of supplies in larger amounts is more cost effective. I do understand this does mean a larger initial investment, but think of all the time you're going to save by doing less batches. You're cutting down on the prep work, and then you're cutting down on all the washing when you just make one batch versus, say, 4 smaller batches. Which leads me to my next tip, which is to streamline your product line. And yeah, absolutely, variety is good. But when you have a strong core product line, it means less individual ingredients to keep on hand and predictability for your customer base. The way you get around wanting variety and trying all the new things, though, is to have limited edition lines that are seasonal. It gives you a lot of reasons to communicate with your customers, create excitement, create those limited edition lines that they can only get 1 or 2 times a year. And that way you have your core line they're buying from you, and you still get to play with those limited edition products. All right, my last tip, which is, yes, a little bit of a plug, is to sign up for the Handcrafted Rewards program at Brambleberry. It's free to join, so nothing to lose, and you earn points with every single purchase. These points can be redeemed for money off of your purchase and more, and once you reach higher tiers, there's shipping perks too. Every little bit helps to save you money. I would love to hear your money saving, small business, soap making, hobbyist tips and tricks below. Leave them below because everyone's going to be reading them and learning from you, and we get to learn from your in the trenches experience. So leave a tip below for other soap makers and me to read and learn from, and I'll see you on the socials. #BrambleOn whenever you make something that you want us to see, you want me to see, and you want everyone to get inspired by. Until next time, give us a thumbs up below and happy soaping.